Okay. Last year, I started a Substack. It was in hopes of becoming a better writer and to fill my portfolio, and in order to basically just become more notable, to become more seen in the spaces that I wanted to exist in. I wanted my short term goals, I suppose, at the time were that I wanted to get selected to be in a literary magazine, a journal, or something like that, just to kind of prove to myself that I'm a good writer. And I think that the trajectory of writing kind of tells you that. It's that you have to have the accolades and you have to have the status and all of those things. I mean, I think it's like any other career. I think any other career sends you upon a trajectory and you have to hit the markers in order for you to level up and get to the next place and in defining yourself within that industry. But for me, when I was doing this, when I was trying to become a better writer, because at the same time I was also writing 2 books, I was focusing on 2 novels, I also started looking into more advice about being a better writer because I was getting a lot of rejection, even on my Substack. I would look up videos of master classes of different authors talking about what to do, what not to do, what's the best course of action. I think really didn't help me a lot. I still struggled. I still struggled a lot trying to understand it. Even before that, even the year before that, I was really focused on becoming a screenwriter and trying to get into those spaces because I went to film school and my ultimate goal was to be a screenwriter for a really long time. I mean, it's still one of my goals, but it's more so on the back burner, if anything. But at the time, I had just completed an internship with a management team, and I had found resources to a Q&A that Winnie Holtzman was doing. This was before Wicked Part 1 came out, and maybe it had just been announced. I'm not sure. It was like the summer of 2023, which was a horrendous summer for me, but that's another story for a different time. But at the time, I was really focused on this, and I asked her, I believe I only asked her one question about dialogue, and it was, how can I make my dialogue sound different from character to character? And even now, I still think about that question just because I have yet to finish one draft of anything. I haven't finished a draft of either of the projects that I've been working on. I've finished drafts of like my short stories or my prose and my obviously my Substack articles. Those have been drafted and refined and all of those things. That's nothing new, but it's more so that with a full project, something that I've been working on tediously, I have yet to complete a complete body of work. And I think that comes from a very rigid sense of personality, or not a rigid belief in myself. I think it comes from a rigid belief in what artistry means and what artistry looks like, right? She kind of said something similar where she said, don't worry about it in the first draft. That's something that you think about much, much later. And I can understand how that seems very simple, but I think it also really does kind of relieve something inside of me to know that, because I think about how in The Artist Way that many people have talked about and many people have been working with. I have not read the book, but I know that one piece of it is that you're supposed to think about all the ways that you've been wounded as an artist. Who has said something to you, or what has been done to your work or your craft that has made you believe that you're not good enough. And I think about back to school, how when I was in grade school, a lot of my teachers would tell me that my writing would be built with a lot of fluff, that I had a lot of words, and I used a lot of phrasing and a lot of prose that made things a little bit too that didn't get to the point properly. And I always felt like that it affected me so badly. Like, it affected me in such a way where I was so confused and I felt so saddened by it. And at the time I was like, okay, this is just the way that I write. And it was said to me as if it was something that I had to fix, as if I had to take away all of these things. And of course, for certain essays, of course, you have to have a different type of voice. But I think even with that, I think that there's so many different types of journalism that's the reason why, is that you go to certain journalists, you go to certain people that are orating a story. I mean, even telling history, even telling something in a factual way, you have to have a certain type of grace to it that is personalized. People are going to you because it's the way that you're explaining something. It's because it's the way that it has parts of you within it. And I think too often do we think that because we're getting notes on something, and sometimes it can be something that is actually helpful, but I think it's really best that we self-evaluate, that we look deeper inside to see, is it really practical, or is it just something that takes away parts of myself? Because even though it might be something that hinders the writing, I think that even with it hindering the writing, that it's underneath all the things that are bad about it, there's something that's really truly you. And I think that you have to sift through what makes it bad and what makes it you. I think for me, the idea that I have a lot of fluff in my writing, the idea that I use a lot of prose, I find that beautiful. And I found that when I started to read more books that had more beautiful prose, my attraction to these books is built on my love of how beautifully it's written. That these books are not just rooted in the character building or the creation of the plot. It's more so I work very much in tandem of things that hold a lot of beauty. That is who I am. To my core is that I love things that are very, very beautiful, that are very opulent. I don't really care if it distracts from in a way, I do care if it distracts from the actual story, but I do need it to be ever so present at the forefront of the story, that this is being told, that this is being orated with care and loved and attention to detail. That is what makes me feel ignited as a reader. I feel ignited as a reader when I see these things, when I see that the author has the same eye that I do, because that's what makes me feel good writing it. When I write because I am crafting a story through my own eyes. I've always thought that, as most readers have, that books are essentially movies inside of your head. So to me, I've always thought good writing is if you are able to capture something, like the lack of a sense, right? You have 5 senses: smell, sight, taste, sound, and touch, right? And if you can take away 1 or 2 or a couple of those senses, and you're able to put those back through only one sense, which is reading, you only have the visual experience of reading it, or if you're listening to an audiobook, hearing it, then you have to capture all the other senses that are missing. And I feel like that's really good. I feel like that is something that is just undeniable about excellent writing. Now, there is a lot of excellent writing that doesn't have that. There are a lot of excellent writers that have been said to be excellent writers that write very simply, that they that they write in a way that is very orchestrated for simpler minds, or I guess not simpler minds, but people that have a very I don't know. I'm not that audience. I can't really tell you what simple language does for a person. But I know that there is an audience for that, you know, and that doesn't make that writing bad. It just makes it different. And I think that that is the first way to truly reinstate yourself as a creative, is that understanding that the way that you naturally are as a writer is not bad. It doesn't necessarily have to change in its entirety from its core. It just has to be a little bit different than the way that it is now. It has to be fine tuned. And I don't think that a lot of advice that is geared towards new writers or people that are coming back into writing or just coming back into the creative space actually helps people. I think that it's so vague and it's so ominous of, you know, go out more, live more, consume more media, read more. It's so vague. It's vague in what are you looking for? What are you actually trying to get? The sustenance. What is the sustenance that you need from these activities, from reading more, from consuming more content? And I actually don't think that it's about consuming more content. I do think that the living more is very, very imperative, because I think that you have to be around other people that have different thoughts and patterns and beliefs and cultures than you do, in order to use that as foundational aspects to your character building. And I think that you can do this even without necessarily going out and talking to people, but I think that you have to have this natural curiosity of the world. I think that that is the charisma of being a writer, is that you have to want to learn and to research and to study people, whether that is in person, which is the best way to do it, is the primary usage of interacting with people is discovering things about them, discovering things about their world, and using that in your new creations, you know. But I think that, you know, even the media that I consume, a lot of the stuff on YouTube that I watch, for instance, is that I love watching videos of artists create their character designs, and I love interior design, and I love film, and I love like all of these different mediums and rituals that people do with their lives. I love people that talk about fragrance and clothing and stuff like that, and those are my interests too. But I also do love listening to people talk about science in a very beautiful and artistic way as well. I think that when somebody can truly when you can watch somebody fall in love with whatever it is that makes them come alive, and they do it in such a way where you know that they're not just doing it for the love of the accomplishment, but the love of the ingenuity that is held within that craft. That is something that just is worthwhile to write about, in my opinion. I think that interacting in those moments is what I write for, you know, is being able to describe these moments, to describe these moments, to describe these people in this way, in this moment, holding them to the candle, holding them to the flame, and getting every single detail in the lowest of lights and the highest of lights, whatever you want to say, right? I think that there's also something super sensual about creation, and I think that that is very apparent in the way that you must learn your body before you share it with somebody else. And I think that's the same thing for creating something. I think that you have to know your art so deeply and how it is so intrinsically attached to you, how it is intrinsically a part of you. At what points does it connect to you in your soul, in your mind, in your past, in your childhood, all of these things, in order for you to fully be able to express that, and for that to be able to be, I guess, digested into the soul of other people. Is that how can they be enraptured and encaptured by something if you don't even know where it lands in your own soul, if you don't even know where it lands in your own heart? So I think that that's why it's such a art in general can be such a sensual experience of taking it in, because it is a sensual experience of putting it out. And too many people think of it as just they think of it as an option. They think of it as something that is suggested. It's like
it's like a stop sign. Some people take it as like a suggestion. They don't take it as something seriously.
That is also part of it, that there are things that you covet about yourself and things that you might ignore about yourself. I think that there's this black and whiteness that people have of things that I hate and things that I love about what I do, about what I make. And I think that polarizing idea of who you are and what you do is what creates this sense of perfectionism, right? The sense of perfectionism that we have to really get away from, because it is only, I think you're abandoning so much of yourself. I think you're abandoning so much of the integrity of the reason that you are an artist in the first place. And I think with the idea of coveting something versus ignoring something, I think that when you covet something, it's something that you hold in praise and admiration, right? And the things that you might ignore about yourself are the things that you really kind of just want to put in the dungeon and want to lock away with a key. There's a sense of shame about it. It shouldn't be a sense of hatred, but you have to acknowledge that you are shameful. This morning, my oh, actually this morning, my one of my friends, she texted me and she said that she had a dream. And the night before, we were talking a lot about her worries and her fears and insecurities and stuff like that. Like, most women in their 20s talk about. And she said that she had a dream where I told her in this dream that she said, okay, this is what the quote is. Don't try to worry so much about the present, and think of your present as the past that has already been written, and focus on your future. And I thought that was so amazing and profound, and I'm, kind of honored in a way that she she had me as the conduit for that message. But I think that is so important, that a lot of people, I think, forget, is that you have just the present and the past to really see yourself through. And of course, because those are the only things that you have to see yourself through, they're so hell-bent on believing that is the only truth. But you do have the future, and it is unwritten. Focusing on the future is so much more whimsical, and it ignites something inside of you. It builds something in you to think about just nothing more than the possibility of something. I think that the possibility of something, feeling that you're on the precipice of something, there is a sense of just magic there. And I don't know how else to explain this, because it is simply just a feeling. It is very much of the difference between nothing matters and the absence of, this is defeat, of saying this, that nothing matters in the sense of defeat, of, oh my god, everything that I've ever done, it doesn't matter. Everything that I'm doing, it doesn't matter. Whereas nothing matters, meaning that is a sense of freedom. Nothing matters. That, yeah, so what? If I go and I embarrass myself, it doesn't matter. If I go and I try something and it fails, it doesn't matter, right? And I think that we fluctuate between these two stages in our lives constantly. I'm not going to say that I'm perfectly aligned with the latter, but I do think that there is this incessant need to keep us in the former, right? There is this weight that society, that our friends, that our family, or whoever that we're around, or the information that was consuming us rather than we are consuming it. The information that is consuming us constantly tells us and reiterates to us that yes, nothing matters and it sucks, that life sucks, that you suck, all of these things. And I think that that's so horrible for us to constantly be in that state. And I think that some people think that because of that, we are constantly in that state, that they are never going to become the artist that they wish that they can be. And that they're the lucky ones that are out there and they're discovering themselves, or they're ones that are prodigies and geniuses and naturals at it, and that they can never compete with that they'll spend their entire life trying to compete with those people. But I think that those people do have that sense of freedom, and they do believe in themselves in a way that no one else does, and they don't let that hold them. They can't let that hold them back. They will not let that hold them back, that they are the only person that believes in them, because they are doing it for just the pure enjoyment of it. They are doing it because the fact that they love the art that they create, that it doesn't matter if it goes with the rules and the regulations and the rubrics, that is something that is theirs and only for them. I mean, how many of these geniuses that have handcrafted new ways of music, of new ways of art, of visual art, of filmmaking, of writing, how many of these people actually studied the rubric for years and decades? And these people that have changed the fabric of creation are not people that are dependent on the approval of others. I don't know. Maybe I'm just saying is that there's like this translucent essence that fills their body like champagne, and it radiates off them so much that it's just impossible to ignore. And I think that for me, that is truly the advice that I would give someone that's just starting out as a writer or just coming back into their creative energy. I mean, I don't have any room, just because I'm also on this journey, but I think that this journey is becoming more and more apparently the natural way of life. I think a lot of people are discovering themselves as artists or rediscovering themselves as artists, and it's rightfully so, because that is just the natural order of the world, that art makes history. We define ourselves based off of what we can remember because of what's written down, of the potteries that's been made, of the stories that have been told, of the paintings that have been made. All of these things are the statues, anything that you can think of is an art rooted in the cultures that are then remembered, cultures that are then dissected upon their impact of the world, and of what they become, and the grandiosity of to be remembered through that. There are certain names that we remember and certain names that we don't, but I don't think that's the important part. I think what the important part is that it's human. It's just a human experience being documented. And I think that for me, I think of writers, especially fiction writers, I consider us to be creative journalists. We rewrite stories that come from truths or partial truths, and within our context of who we are and the people that we're around, or our politics or our society or our cultures, and we make them into something worth being remembered, something that's worth being retold, because some people only see the value when it is entertainment, but it's not just entertainment. And that's the thing, is that we are capturing all forms of audiences, the people that want to see it from a different perspective than just the historical aspect, but the everyday person, the layman's person, the people that are just living day to day. And even in the doom scale of what our society looks like right now, we can't ignore ourselves and stop creating. I mean, people are going through wars and famines and apocalyptic events every single day, but that doesn't mean that you stop creating, because once we stop creating, then we stop being human. We stop our society. We stop living in the memory of what it means to be human. And I think that that's all I have for right now, honestly. I mean, there's so much more that I could talk about, but I think I'll save that for another video, for another time. But this is my sermon for now. I could talk about so many other things that I did initially have planned for this video. I had an entire script. I written 2 scripts for this video, actually, and then I also did another I did an actual full sit-down video where I was speaking, but I sounded like I was being held hostage, so I had to do this voiceover to kind of make up for that. And hopefully this all turns out well. But until next time, I think next time I will share some of my research and what inspires me to write. Like physically, I will show you the books and the I'll show you I'll just show you the trajectory of the planning aspects, the planning process of me writing a story, and why I believe that when you are writing a story that it should change you, that every single one of them should absolutely have an impact on your identity. I think that that's so important to artistry. I think that's so important to creating, is that if it's not having an entirely if it's not shifting your identity, if it's not shifting the way that you believe in something, then I think that you have to do a little bit more digging. I think you have to go back in and do some more self-evaluation on what the purpose of your creation is. So, with that being said, thank you for listening.